Hi everyone, it's Booney. I'm gonna briefly overview this question and answer, and then I'll go into more detail in the future. So someone asked, let's see, what is covered in law and ethics that clients don't typically know that is important to know? It's a lot. Clients don't know a lot about law and ethics. This is why it's super important to hold integrity, maintain integrity in the practice of psychotherapy or any practice where you're a healing professional and you have perceived authority over someone who is potentially in a vulnerable position. Some of the things are about informed consent, like when you read the contract, what is really itemized in a client's rights. Breaching confidentiality is a big one because when you think about it, you think about like, okay, everything's a secret. Everything that I share cannot be used against me. There are some things that a therapist will potentially have to breach confidentiality, and it's like a huge list of things. The big ones are child abuse potential. Even if it's not for sure, therapists don't investigate. If it sounds like it's a reasonable suspicion for child abuse, they're going to report it. And that's something that you have to put in your contract, in your informed consent, to someone who's talking to you. And like, it's about who's allowed to consent to services. So like the big one for me, I just read about it, I'm still thinking about it. Like when someone comes into the therapeutic space, sometimes people want to please authority figures and they'll consent to services. And so you want to make sure that if you're the therapist or if you're the client, you want to make sure that you're agreeing to services on your own free will. And there's a caveat to that. If you're someone who is conserved, if you're a child, if you're an adult who needs extra support, and so you have someone else who took your rights away from you and they make all the decisions for you, you cannot agree to these services, right? Or if you're court mandated to agree to services, you have individual rights as well, even though you're being mandated to do therapy. So it's very nuanced, and it should be described in your informed consent. When you go to therapy, the therapist has to take that time to clarify what these terms mean to you in this space. What's the implication of agreeing to these, to working in this relationship, and revoke your agreement to services at any time. Sometimes people forget that and like, okay, well, I agreed, I guess I have to keep on working with them. No, you are the client. Your rights exist all the time. You're allowed to say like, I don't want to work with you anymore, I'm done. So you're allowed to do that. And one last thing I will share, and then I'll do future videos to expand on these things, is like, when you are working with a therapist, their job is to clearly describe what the therapeutic relationship could look like. So in the beginning, it could be boring because they're going over informed consent with you. They're going over a contract. This is a legal and ethical things related to your wellness and very vulnerable position. So if they're not going over the informed consent, they're like, just like, oh yeah, you've gone to therapy before, I don't need to read this stuff with you. Like, for me, that's a red flag. It's going to be kind of boring. It's going to be very like over the list. Let's go over this list. Let's go over your rights. Let's go over potential breaches of confidentiality. And then my job, if I do breach confidentiality, is hopefully I can regain that trust with you, repair the trust, because therapy is about healing bonds, broken relationships, and attachment with people that, you're repeating these origins of things in the past. So if you're going into the relationship with a therapist, it's a powerful, very vulnerable position where you're gonna have these familiar themes pop up. And so like back to informed consent, where you talk about your rights and confidentiality and your rights as a client and consumers, a therapist should be ongoingly talking to you about confidentiality, talking about your rights as a consumer, your right to question treatment, and making sure that the treatment plan reflects your original goal. And if it does change, to ask, like, are we going towards my goal? We kind of changed the path and we're talking about what I think you're talking about, your goals, your intentions. You're the consumer, you're the client, you talk about what you want to talk about. That's your time and your money. It's yours. And a lot of people forget that. You think that the therapist is going to guide you and tell you where to go, what to do. It's about 50-50, where like, okay, we'll see, it's a relationship, it's kind of like a growing kind of chemistry, kind of like this orchestra, this dance. If you ever feel like you forgot your goals for therapy, hopefully you have these moments with the therapist that you go back and forth and talk about. Maybe we got sidetracked. Let's go back to the original goal. Let's look at the treatment plan and talk about it again. So these are just some of the things that I thought about while I'm reading about law and ethics. I'm going to bring up more stuff as I read more of the book. I've only read 100 pages. There's like 200 more to go over for law and ethics. And so I hope this helps clarify and help people plant seeds on the bigger picture for why law and ethics is so important on the practice of therapy, and why it is such an obscure thing, because it's talking about your individual journey. It's so unique. And yet there's a lot of things that must be talked about in the beginning and throughout the therapeutic relationship. For me, it's about informed consent, your individual rights to revoke your agreement to services, and ongoing talking about confidentiality, breaching confidentiality, to make sure that you know that what you're sharing is safe. And yet there is some nuance to when, as a protector of social realms, the therapist is a mandated reporter, and there's some things that they have to, by obligation, by their duty, to report. And so hopefully when, if it does happen, they will repair, and that, you know, it's an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to heal and connect. So that's just my blurb on this question. I'm really happy that Shimi Jamili asked this question. I hope it helps the consumers and clients as well. Thank you so much for watching, everybody.